Hello, hi, my name's Lee Hampton. I am the Employment and Skills Manager on the One Horton Heath project, and I work for Eastleigh Borough Council. And I'm joined by Laura McGuinness at Eastleigh College as well, and she will introduce herself in a moment. So if we can just go on to the first slide, please. So we are delivering a workshop today entitled Making Work Placements Work, and it's how do we help prepare students better for work placements as employers. So just a little bit of background information first of all. I'm working on a mixed use development that will be built out over the next decade. So One Horton Heath is in the Borough of Eastleigh. We're going to be building about 2,500 homes. There will be a local centre as well with shops, community spaces and a local primary school. So we're going to have about 35% affordable housing on there, and there's going to be about 7 acres of mixed use retail, but we're still retaining about a third of the sites, around 125 acres, which will be retained as wildlife spaces, recreational space. So next slide, thank you. So I head up the employment and skills team. So I'm out there to kind of facilitate and be a bridge between the training providers, our local schools and colleges, and the employers. So I started off creating and delivering initiatives in schools, and I go in and do various workshops supporting schools' careers programmes. We've recently launched the new Youth Hub. That's with the Department of Work and Pensions. That's in Eastleigh too, with a separate team, but we work really closely together. Then I tend to go out and build relationships with all of the colleges so that I can kind of go back and feed into the colleges what I'm hearing from local employers regarding skills gaps, particularly around construction and housing sectors. The biggest piece of work I've done in my first year at Eastleigh Council has been creating a social value toolkit. The social value toolkit means that now, as we procure all services and goods from the supply chain on the development, we ask for added value from that supply chain. So we ask them to support employment and skills initiatives that we will be delivering, or we will be pulling in funding for partners to deliver on our behalf. So, for example, I might be asking the supply chain to give a day of skills, whether that be an electrician, a plumber, it could be an HR person, it could be somebody working in the contractor's legal department. They give a day's worth of volunteering hours to help a local training provider, a local school, or they might come in and deliver a careers workshop with me, or come to a careers fair with me into one of our schools. So, supported internships. So I was having conversations with Eastleigh College last year about the variety of courses on offer and how I could best support the college. And they approached me about taking on a supported internship placement, which I was thrilled to do at the beginning of this year. So I'd never done this before, so I needed a bit of hand holding at the beginning, and I suggested I came into the college and I delivered a workshop to get to know the students prior to us putting out to advert the placement. So I came in and delivered the workshop, which we entitled Employer Expectations, talking to young people about how to do a successful job application and some top tips around interview technique. And then finally, we focused on, I left them with a task where they created a mood board where they could share with me images, drawings, words that help describe them and how they're unique, particularly focusing on their skills and qualities. And then we could sort of help them identify what skills and qualities, they might need to develop. So I came in and delivered that workshop. So I met all of that cohort of young people. And then when we released out the advert, it meant that we had a good take up for application for my placement role. So with regards to successes out of that placement, I would say one of the biggest successes is it really helped to bring me closer to the college, to build that relationship with the college and inform them about the challenges I was facing and what was happening. So that's been really great to form that relationship. It's been great to evidence to our supply chain that we do what we ask them to do, championing a diverse employee sort of mix. And also to share with them and be able to support them going forward with themselves taking on supported internship placements. So there's the successes really, and just having our placement join the team, you can see her there on her induction, and she really just viewed things from a different perspective, through a different lens, and that was really great for my team to see. Challenges around the placement, I'm going to go into in a little bit more depth, but challenges I felt really supported by the college on, because there were some difficulties along the way. And I think expectations from our perspective as an employer and expectations from the viewpoint of the supported intern was kind of like the challenges that we face. But we were really lucky, you know, working closely with the college, it meant that we could overcome those difficulties very early on. And I'm going to talk about reflection as well. So if we can go on to the next slide, Tony. Brilliant. So these are kind of like my reflections. So at the end of the placement, which had taken place during the pandemic, which meant that the role was done virtually, and as you'll see, and I'll come to in a minute, that was probably one of the biggest challenges, and probably one of the things that I now regret that we did, but we were in a space where that was our only option at the time. So I'll just go round and just touch on these. So as an employer, these are some of the things that are sort of lessons learned really, that I fed back to the college, that I felt didn't work or was a bit of a curveball that I hadn't sort of envisaged being a difficulty. So the first one was ensure about how much of the placement's diagnosis to share with the team. So very early on, I asked my student to tell me in her own words how she would describe herself and what she needed me to put in place to help her feel supported in the workplace. And I did that rather than look at her EHCP, because I wanted her voice. I wanted her narrative around what she needs, because as an employer, if I see the word autism or ADHD, yes, I've got a bit of insight because I've worked in schools, but most employers wouldn't. So it's really important that we understand you and your unique difficulties and challenges and how we can sort of overcome those with you. So that was difficult because I'd been shared those, so I knew them. But then when other members of the team started to ask me, well, what is her diagnosis? What difficulties she had? I didn't know how to broach that conversation. It was not my diagnosis to share, so that was a little bit tricky. I did find with her that there was a real lack of engagement in the work we were doing, in the project we were doing. She would often decline coming out to site and meeting the partners that I was working with. That had a lot to do with her anxiety, which I wasn't so aware of initially, and it goes on to sort of the next point, which was she was very anxious around meeting new people. And because most of the work she was doing was online, she would be okay when we had an online meeting, and then 2 days later when we were due to have a site meeting, she didn't feel capable to sort of overcome that and come and do the actual sort of live working with me. So I think that really stifled her learning on the placement, and I find that quite difficult as the employer, because I kept thinking, what am I doing wrong? So that was another challenge. The next one, I found it difficult. So our placement found it really difficult to understand professional etiquette and the social boundaries. I work in the construction sector, so I work in a sector that is predominantly male orientated. Where we live, it's quite white, middle-aged men, and that is something that we constantly challenge, and part of my role is sort of challenging that with the employers and trying to get them to be more diverse, but that is how it is at the moment. So there's a lot of banter, there's a lot of sort of ribbing each other in meetings, we talk across each other, but for our placement, she found that quite difficult, and understanding what you can say and is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, and maybe a little bit personal to share in the room. And again, that was a little bit difficult because we were doing that virtually. So again, I fed that back to the college. Communication difficulties with discussions on Zoom. So my placement I could visually see sort of distancing herself from what was happening on a Zoom or a Teams meeting call, and sort of stepping away from the camera or having something to eat or drink, things that we wouldn't do in the work placement as professionals. So there was a little bit of difficulty and a lack of engagement, I would say, on those sort of meetings. So after all that reflection, one of the key things I sort of came away thinking was, do you know what, I'd really like to create a video that helps young people within EHCP, but also in mainstream school with mainstream students, to kind of help them to understand this is a brilliant opportunity, winning a placement, gaining a placement with an employer. What can you do prior to that starting, and what can we do as employers prior to that commencement of the placement to make sure that that really is meaningful for both sides, for the employer and for the candidate. So we've got funding now, and we're going to be creating a video called Making My Work Placement Work for Me, and we're going to be working really closely with the college on that tool so they can share it with students, and any school across Hampshire and beyond will be able to access that and use it in the classroom. Helping a young person with SEND to see a photograph perhaps of the building they're going to be working in, the person that they're going to be working with, feeling comfortable to ask what time is lunch, do I need to bring lunch, do I need to bring particular clothing, all those sort of things we'll put as top tips in the video. So Tony, if you can just flick onto the next slide, please. So I'm going to introduce you to Laura, who's just been amazing at supporting me with my placement. The whole team have been brilliant at Eastleigh College. So I'll pass you over to Laura.
Thank you, Lee. My name's Laura McGuinness. I'm currently the lead job coach of the supported internship programme. And as Lee said, we've actually been working closely, I think even more so prior to your placement, thinking about moving into next year and support for what's coming up. The feedback, I think, has been invaluable for sort of looking at our offer for this year, and then we've made some changes as a result of that. So Tony, if you could just move on to the next slide. Thank you very much. So as I said, the effective strategies really that have come out really as a result of working with a range of employers, but particularly to Borough Council, is looking at the successes really that made that work to start off with. So as Lee said, the preparation before the placement was really, really helpful. Setting those clear expectations, the workshop for learners, coming in and just making sure that they know what's expected in the workplace. Because, for a lot of these learners, they've had quite a disrupted time over the past couple of years, not been able to sort of complete work experience, not get a true kind of reflection maybe of what's needed in the workplace. So I think it really helps to sort of have that input right at the start, so they know exactly how they should be behaving, what employers are expecting, with regards to job interviews, applications, all of that sort of thing, to make sure that they're as prepared as possible as they can be. The employer expectation workshop, as we said, that's something that we're hoping to roll out actually to the new cohort that we have this year. We do have quite a lot of rollovers on our course this year due to the disruption of the pandemic, but we do have a group of new learners who would really benefit, I think, from that input. And again, that would be focusing on how to write a job application, how to actually write and put together a CV, and also the interview process, just even from what's expected, what's to wear, all of those sort of things, and making sure that they sort of have this as a professional example really to follow. The feedback, as we said, has directly impacted our offer basically for this academic year. So we have a slightly different model now this year. Basically, the learners are in college for 1 day a week. Half of that day they focus on English and math skills, and the other half of the day they are in a workshop with a job coach, and they're working on these sorts of things. So CVs, interview skills, and workplace kind of training, customer service, expectations, how to interact with people, all of these sorts of things that have come up as a little bit of a challenge at times, particularly in this way of working when you're having to work remotely, and there's lots of other challenges that maybe we never thought of previously. It's these sorts of skills that we're focusing on in that time. Also, sort of picking up on the point I think that Lee was saying about how much information to share with a team about a learner's diagnosis or their additional needs, that has actually directly impacted our development of something we call an employer passport. So basically that's a one-page document, as you can see on the slide there, where it's got just some brief overview of details of basically a learner's needs, but more importantly strategies to help them. So they don't sort of have to come out and just say, you know, I have this, I have struggled with this. It could just be that these are the things I find difficult. These are the ways that you can help me. These are the ways that I will work best. So it's, you know, putting that kind of, I don't know, the ownership back to the learner to be able to sort of go ahead and actually feel that they've got ownership of explaining their needs, but also helping them to build up those strategies to sort of perform well in the workplace and just across, you know, other aspects of life as well, just interacting with other people. But we found so far that some of our learners who have started their placements this academic year, that's worked really well for them. They can turn up to an interview with a CV, with their employer passport, and that's really helped, I think, to reassure the employer right from the start. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide, thanks very much. So as I said, that reassurance and that induction and settling in process is really important. You know, initially, there should be, from our point of view as a college, you know, extensive support for both the intern and the employer. You know, as Lee said, for some employers, this could be the first time they've ever taken on an intern. It could be the first time they've ever worked with anyone with additional needs, or particularly, you know, their workforce. So it's really important that that support is there right from the start with the team of job coaches. So as we said, a visit with a job coach to familiarise with the work environment is essential at the start. We always make sure that you know, we actually support a student when they go out and have sometimes they might go and visit an employer before they actually have an interview, but we always ensure that there is at least an informal interview process that takes place before a placement starts, because there's that expectation, you know, that would be the same in the workplace once they leave college. And also it just sets up those expectations that they know that they need to be taking this seriously. Yes, it's an internship, but everything that they're doing is what would be expected of a paid employee. So face-to-face meetings between the employer, the college staff and the job coach is really important to discuss the structure of the programme, as we said, and the individual needs. So sometimes, you know, employers would like to know a little bit more detail, more so than others. You know, we can then just basically work around those strategies that would help support that learner in the workplace. And it's important that that dialogue, I think, continues all the time. You know, as soon as there's any concerns, the employer can contact us or contact the job coach even when they're on placement, you know, and that's something that can be resolved kind of on the spot. The intern, when they attend the workplace, is important sometimes to shadow a colleague in a similar job role. We've had this recently. We've set up quite a large number of placements in one location at a local hotel, where actually the idea is that as much as there will be the support from the job coach, the learner will also be buddied up with a member of staff. So they can be shadowing that member of staff as they go along. So it's that extra support, an extra safety net there, just as new employees do when they're new to a company, you know, have somebody they can go and ask for questions just to reassure them, but just so they know exactly what's expected. Because as you can imagine, starting a new role for anybody is always a bit daunting, but particularly when you do have those additional needs and you know it's a placement, you know it's part of your course, there's much more kind of heightened anxiety around that. So it's really important, as I said, that reassurance is there right from the start. So, and again, it's important that the job coach communicates with the employer to make sure that the role is adapted when necessary. You know, and this idea of job carving is something that we're really keen to work with on employers, because as much as there may well be a job description, you know, that the learner can't completely meet, it may be that there are aspects of that role that they can really thrive with and then move forward with, and then that frees up maybe some other roles and other jobs for other members of the team that are already there. A recent example, we had a student who was very successful over the summer. He basically was working at a car recycling centre, and actually he found that because he was very methodical and he was very careful with recording information, he was able to log the details of hundreds of car parts a day. So he could work through that. Other members of the team, you know, fine to let him carry on with that, but actually that meant that freed them up to do other things. That actually resulted in paid employment, and he's now working there full time. So that's fantastic, and that's really the idea, and that's, you know, what we're aiming for with every placement. So as you said, you know, support with ensuring those reasonable adjustments are made. Some employers may need a bit more information on disability awareness or, you know, other adaptations to make, and, you know, the college is there to support, as are the job coaches. When a student starts their placement, the job coach support is quite intensive, so they'll be there, you know, for the full day, and then we kind of play that little bit by ear of how that student's getting on, how the employer feels. We've had some learners start recently where they've sort of had a full day intensive support and actually it's been fine. Then we just pop in for kind of a monthly review. And there's others where we've sort of realised a bit more support's needed, so we keep up that support throughout. And it's kind of all on an individual basis, but basically what the intern and what the employer both need. And as we said there, yes, sort of making sure that there are discussions regarding ongoing goals and targets, and that's really important with those monthly reviews that we have. So, you know, we don't ever just send an intern off into placement and that's it. You see the job coach for a few weeks and you're done. No, the job coach is there, as I said, and even when that support backs off, we make sure that they pop in at least monthly then to make sure that they are reviewing the goals and targets, and the employer can then feed back into those goals as well. And also just making sure that, you know, that the intern is making as most use of the placement as they can do. Because obviously there won't always be a paid job at the end of it, but there will be that really good experience that they can add to their CV, and then also a good reference from the employer that they've been working with. Okay, so as we said, and this continues throughout the duration of the internship. So, you know, employers should be treated as ongoing partners throughout the internship, which is what they are. You know, as I said, it's not just the students placed and that's it. There is that ongoing support all the time through the job coaches and the college, you know, with extra advice. So it's really important for us that employers should feel supported and be involved, as we said, in reflecting on the intern's progress, both through conversations with the job coach and more formal contributions to, as we said, the monthly review. As I said, this is a chance for them to practice and develop new skills, and also to discuss any concerns, because, you know, there will be things that crop up that are a little bit of an issue that we hadn't thought about before, or that, you know, comes up as a result of some of the work they're doing. And it's really important that we're there to guide the learner through that process and reassure the employer that we're there to support with any concerns like that as well. Okay, so as we said, you know, effective employer engagement is essential to the success of internships. So obviously, you know, right from the start of that placement, where we talk about the benefits of the intern coming into the organisation, because there are lots of benefits to that, you know, for the whole wider team, not just the student that's going in. That ongoing support, the flexibility and communication is essential throughout that duration of the placement. It's not going to work if there isn't that communication and relationship with the employer. So that's why we really focus on, you know, we've got a small team of job coaches, but we really make sure we build up those links and we keep that dialogue going to make sure that people feel supported. You know, as we said, and as that ongoing process carries on, the idea is that hopefully that could well lead to a job for the learner, and if not, as I said, a reference moving on, but so that they've had a really positive experience and can, you know, develop their skills as they move forward. Thanks, Tony. Excellent.
So this is where we sort of come to you really, as those that are viewing the video now live and those that are going to view it later. So this is the video that I want to start working, and really it's a big ask out to employers and to training providers as well, to our local colleges and schools. You know, what do we need to have included in this video? So these are kind of like the starter questions that I've been thinking about as employers. You know, what would we like placements to know about our organisation before the placement commences? What do placements need to prepare before they start? So that would be things like, what are they wearing? What time do they need to arrive? How are they going to get there? What the barriers in our organisation are to taking on a supported internship placement or student, you know, with an EHCP. So, you know, what are the difficulties? What do I need to make sure is available, or what adaptations have I put in place so that that person feels supported and comfortable in that placement for the duration? How do we make our organisation more inclusive? You know, we had to shine a light on our team and think, you know, are we being more inclusive? No, we're not. We're putting our hands up to that. What can we do to make that change? How do we make sure that when we're advertising, we're making all of our adverts now more inclusive? So that's been a shift for us as an organisation as well. And how do we prepare our staff for an SEND placement? So that kind of goes back to, you know, when members of my team were asking me what needed to be put in place, what support they needed, what was the diagnosis for this lady that had joined our team. So actually how I share with the rest of my team what the placement is going to mean to us. So these are just some of the questions, but really it's an ask out to you now, and you'll see my details come up in a moment. You know, what do you feel we should include in that video? I want to have some snippets from young people who are asking those questions, and then I'm going to have some snippet videos of the employers sort of giving answers, so that we can really give sort of some top tips, whether that's 10 or less than that or more than that, I don't know at the moment, you know, so that this is a really valuable tool that can be used in mainstream schools and in our special schools across Hampshire, to say, play this video, just so that the student can really start to prepare themselves, and the employer too, for when that placement starts. So it's as meaningful and valuable for both sides as we can possibly make it. So yeah, that's my ask to you really. So I can see there's some ideas coming in the chat, so that's fantastic. And I'm going to give you my email address in a moment so that you can send that through to myself and to Laura if you want to ask Laura any advice as well. So this is me, Lee Hampton, so it's lee.hampton@eastleigh.gov.uk. You've also got my telephone number there, or you know, you can come straight through to Eastleigh Borough Council and leave me a message on there as well. So yeah, please feed in your feedback. I can see there's more questions coming in, so yeah, we will deal with those, and that will help inform the video. And once it's ready, hopefully in the spring, we will let everybody on the call today know. So thank you for inviting me to come and talk about the reflection, the learning I've had around a supported internship placement. And Laura, do you want to go on to the next slide with your details for any questions as a college?
Yeah, as I said, you know, there may be some other colleges that, you know, just like to discuss other ideas, or any other employers that might want to get in touch that, you know, have some ideas for placements. That'd be brilliant. And my contact details are there, so please feel free to, you know, send me an email and get in touch. That'd be great.
Thank you. Bye.